The cool thing is if you want to participate, then you can buy these bands tokens. And if the bands are cool, they could cut off a little piece for you. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing coming forward. Who are the hardcore fans? Who are building the community? And who's going to evangelize this band? Who are the token holders? And how do we want to reward them?
Hello, everyone. GM, I'm Carly Riley. This is Overpriced JPEGs. And today on the show, I have M Shadows, also known as Matt Sanders, also known as the frontman for Avenged Sevenfold, very popular rock metal band, 20 million downloads worldwide. I think that's right. I'm sorry, Matt, if I got that wrong. I think I heard you say that somewhere. Anyhow, I've become a new fan to this band in my research for this show. But the reason I had Matt on is because he is really innovating in the NFT space when it comes to the fan-artist relationship. It's something he's passionate about. And he, with his band, are building out in the metaverse. They're building out an NFT program, and they're doing it right. This is the opposite of a celebrity cash grab. This is somebody who cares deeply about his relationship to his fans and also about this blockchain technology. He's been in the space for a long time. And I have to say, I loved this conversation. I always feel like it takes me a beat to get into the swing of things. You know, my first two questions, I'm feeling a little rusty. I'm feeling a little tight. And then as soon as we got into it, Matt's just such a pleasure to talk to. He's so knowledgeable about the space, even beyond music. And I just had a lot of fun having this conversation. I think you'll have a lot of fun listening to it. And I really got an education. We started to get into it sort of at the end around how the music industry works. I really did not fully understand it. And I have to say, I don't know that I even now fully understand it, but I'm definitely a lot closer to understanding what a thorny industry this is and how many pieces there are to it. So when we all talk about the future on blockchain and what music NFTs could be, it's complicated. And Matt M. Shadows, he really walks us through why that is and maybe where the future might be and the approach that he is taking, which I think is a really sensible one, to help the fans and to create a new experience. So we're not quite there yet. We are not quite living in the world of fans will own the music, but we're starting to see that path. Matt talks about a whole bunch of stuff in terms of what the future could look like, what he's building. Great advice for anybody who's launching a project who maybe has fans, and really just a general chat about the space and about what he's learned, his investment strategy, etc. So I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. I'm sure we will have Matt on again sometime in the future as we see how this music industry unfolds. And with that, I want to turn it over to our wonderful sponsors who make this show possible.
Unstoppable Domains is the #1 provider of NFT domains. With domains ending in .crypto, .x, or .nft, Unstoppable Domains lets you replace your long, complex wallet address with a human-readable address. Using Unstoppable, you can verify the ownership over your NFTs, log into Web3 apps, and join tens of thousands of people using them as their Twitter usernames. With Unstoppable Domains, you can have all of your crypto addresses registered to one single domain. So it doesn't matter where crypto payments are coming from or where they're going. By registering all of your crypto addresses to your Unstoppable domain, all of that is taken care of in the back end. Better yet, with Unstoppable Domains, you don't have to worry about gas costs or renewal fees because you own it. Buy your domain and you can show it off as your new Twitter username. So you can get your name for as low as $5 at unstoppabledomains.com. Everyone is talking about the metaverse these days, and we're all still trying to figure out what it actually is, because everyone is looking for how to get exposure to it. That is why a metaverse index fund is so important, because in such a young market, an index can give you broad exposure to all the various players who are building out all these digital worlds that will ultimately become the metaverse. And that's why you should check out the Metaverse Index from the Index Co-op. The Metaverse Index gives you simple, easy, and safe one-click exposure to the emerging open metaverse trend. The MVI Index contains some of the biggest metaverse projects out there, including AXIE Infinity, Decentraland, Illuvium, and more. So join thousands of holders who have already trusted nearly $50 million to the MVI index. And if you buy $500 of MVI on the Dharma app, you can receive $50 worth of ETH on the Polygon network. There's a link in the show notes for you to click so you can get started on your journey into the metaverse.
Hello, everyone. GM. Welcome to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. I'm Carly Riley, and today on the show, I have Matt Sanders, better known as M Shadows, the frontman for the band Avenged Sevenfold, which I've now gotten into in prepping for this episode, so thank you for that, Matt. And we're here to talk all things music, NFTs, the way that Matt and Avenged Sevenfold are innovating in the NFT space for music. I did a poll on Twitter asking what industry folks most wanted me to talk about in conjunction with NFTs, and music won out. So this is our first music NFT centered episode. Matt, I'm so glad to have you here and so happy that you'll be the one sort of getting our toes wet in this big space of music NFTs.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's start off with I think the piece that everyone is really excited about with NFTs and music and the blockchain, which is from your vantage point, what is the vision for how blockchain is and can really change the music industry and revolutionize, you could say, the music industry?
Well, I think there's a bunch of different ways to attack it. There's communities based on, your fan base and then your personal relationship with them. There's your relationship with the record label. There's your relationship with how the music gets to the fan base and all the intermediates that has to go through. So we should break apart, I guess, at first, let's break apart the community aspect. I feel that the old fan club is a broken model. Pay $900 to meet the band, shake their hand, and you're on your way. And you hire a company to do that, or they build out a museum in your backstage and you do a little VIP and they get drinks, and hire a company to do that. But there's nothing that's all inclusive in terms of the vision I have is the Discord with everybody in there and the bots that are creating these fun games, and a metaverse where people can join and hang out and ideate and start their own bands. And then these things kind of leak over into the real world, which would be tickets and giveaways and POAPs for ticket stubs, and the VIPs can be run through this NFT sort of ecosystem. So that's one thing that bands have to be looking out for. Then the other is how the relationship with the record label, right? The record label model is a model that made a lot of sense in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And then streaming came along and you could upload everything right onto the internet and go straight to your fans. And the idea of getting records made and put into stores like Best Buy and Target and Walmart, and the idea of sending out a marketing person to get you on MTV or radio stations, the labels don't have to do that anymore. The whole thing is changing. So when you look at the cut that they get from those earlier models, it's, up near 75, 80% of an artist's, income. Now, if you change that revenue stream around and then the artist can share that back with the fans, maybe the people that collect their tokens or the people that are in these VIP fan clubs, you start finding some really cool ways to play with these things. And I think from what I've seen, the blockchain and NFTs are really the only way to get that done, because you need accountability. You need accounting to be immutable, where it doesn't go behind all these sort of where there's paper trails and there's lawyers that are auditing labels, and you get paid 24 months after a song was streamed. So there's a lot of ideas I dispute out right there, but there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down with how a band is going to interact with their fans and how they're going to interact with their label.
Yeah. I think there's kind of three threads that I feel like I heard you pulling on there, which was the streaming music and decentralizing the streaming system versus right now where you still have these record labels, taking a huge percent of your streaming revenue is my understanding. There's sort of the ticketing piece that I think is interesting, and the live touring and where NFTs could play into that. And then this community and this relationship between the band and the fans. Let's just start with this decentralized streaming concept. I know Blau is doing stuff on this with Royal. I heard you, I think, say I've heard you say a couple different things about how this applies to rock bands like yourselves, where on the one hand you feel like you're kind of benefiting. You're not benefiting in this current system in the sense that the radio isn't playing you anyway, particularly. And, you're not Taylor Swift. You're not whatever being played on the radio all the time. You're not necessarily being, pumped or promoted by Spotify particularly. So you really have nothing to lose by switching into a new world. On the other hand, I've heard you talk about, you are still somewhat you need the distribution of a Spotify to a certain extent because you have an older fan base. Talk to me about like in your particular situation and with rock bands in general, how you see this playing out, where it is right now, and where you see it going.
Yeah, there's this great writer for music. His name's Bob Lefsetz, and he always talks about the content is king, meaning that you have to put it on the platforms that people are listening to. I always think about this scenario where you're on, a road trip with your family and you've got, Spotify and Shuffle. Most people aren't going to turn off Spotify, go to this weird janky app that only you're on and stream your song and then jump back into Spotify to listen to the rest of the
Kind of the
stuff,
problem with Tidal, right? It was like you have Jay-Z, the biggest artist in the world, and even he couldn't really fully pull people off of Spotify.
Yeah, you can't. It's like it's a deeper embedded kind of problem, and it has to happen more as a groundswell. And then once people use those, because listen, people weren't streaming the first day streaming was available. It was a slow build of Napster, and it was a slow build of people getting these files. And then it was like, oh, we don't really need, well, you still needed an iPod and you kind of needed your Walkman still. And then slowly things start going away. And then everyone goes like, oh, it's a no-brainer. Let's all just stream. And the cloud is easy and we can do all these things. And so we want to push towards that future, but you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot so quickly and just get too cute with it, right? So we have this situation where we want to be distributed to people. We want people to be able to listen to music easily, but we want to promote these ideas so that when this new world does come, people are used to it. And also we want to push the Spotifys of the world and push the labels of the world, that it's going to be better for everybody in the long run. They're probably going to get more trust and more artists if they do jump over to more of a tokenized royalty system or something on chain where artists can see exactly what's happening and the money can be given to them within 9 hours, right? Actually quicker than that, but that's going to be a healthier ecosystem, I think, for all musicians. And then give the money to the musicians in a way that's more fair instead of all these, these, what would you call it? They're like services that the labels provide that they don't actually provide anymore, right? So what are we paying, that same price for when it used to cost you $3 to make a CD? You'd sell $15.99 CDs at Best Buy, but you had to go to Best Buy and you had to work them, and you had to work Target, and you had to pay money to be on the end caps, and you had to pay money to have commercials on MTV. All those things have gone away. So what are they really doing with all that money? So it's kind of the question of like, let's get these better deals. Let's get things more accountable.
Could you see a Spotify, like a major platform that has a particular business model that right now sends a lot of money to these agents and these middlemen, like, could they make this shift, or is it going to have to be an entirely new platform that rises up?
I see both things could happen. I think there's a whole legacy component of anything 2022 and earlier is all music in the old world, right? And so how do you get that music onto the blockchain and into a ecosystem where we can easily stream it, it's easily accountable? And then you have all this stuff moving forward. I think people like Blau and Chainsmokers and Steve Aoki and what we're going to be doing in the future, all the stuff moving forward will be in a new ecosystem. But what do you do with all the old stuff? So yeah, unless at some point something's going to have to happen where the old stuff can get put into this new world. And so it's either going to have to come from the labels if they want to survive, in my opinion, or a Spotify could implement something easily. Or it's like or it's someone rises from the fringes, which is usually what happens in, the innovator's dilemma. It's one of those things that, the new technology comes out and it's all the new artists are there and everyone kind of laughs at it and poo-poos it. And then they stay on their Spotify. And then one day they realize that they're out of date and they upgrade instantly and they're in this new world. The reality is it shouldn't change for the consumer, right? To stream on a decentralized app should not, if all you want to do is simply stream music, you'd still be paying your $9.99 a month and you get all the music. It wouldn't change anything for you. Now, the cool thing is if you want to participate, then you can buy these bands tokens. And if the bands are cool, they could, cut off a little piece for you. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing coming forward. Like, who are the hardcore fans? Who are building the community? And who's going to evangelize this band? Who are the token holders? And how do we want to reward them?
And this, if I'm understanding right, is what really Blau is trying to do with Royal, which is you can own, part of songs of certain artists. Nas, I think, is doing this right now. You can own part of his songs, and then you're entitled to a certain royalty stream moving forward on that song, which is incredible. And like on the face of it, the idea of being an up and coming artist who's able to crowdfund from your fans as opposed to from the label, and therefore to reward your fans who now have an incentive to go and, you know, evangelize you and your band, like that makes all the sense in the world. Security laws.
Yeah.
Do these play a role in complicating actually being able to make this real? Is that playing a role? And not to put you in the position of being a lawyer trying to explain this, but like curious what's happening on that side of things if you have an answer.
Yeah. So let's go back to Blau real quick. I think what he's doing is incredible, but the reality is that model is cool, but it's, to me, you're buying publishing at a very high price, right? Like a Nas piece of publishing is worth a lot of money, and there's a lot of publishing deals that happen already outside of the blockchain, right? Like they've tokenized it. It's very cool. And I think it's important. I think what we're trying to do more is bring the everyday fan of the 10,000 collection and be able to give them something on the back end where it's not necessarily a promise of a piece of backcountry. It's just kind of a promise of an overall catalog, right? Where the bigger the band gets, the more you guys are going to get, and it's kind of just flowing. But I don't think the token actually gives you the right to claim that publishing. It's just something that we're doing. Where the Blau thing is they're clearly buying a piece of the publishing. They're giving it up. I don't know what the percentages are. If it's like 50 still stays with Nas or whatever, but it's a different model in a way. And then the security things are interesting. So I brought up an idea the other day of buying this guy, Vinnie Paul's house, who's like a legend in the Pantera community.
Yeah, you were getting a lot of like shit on Reddit, I feel like, for this.
Yeah. Of course. And it's, the Reddit shit is just, it's just purely does not, like, they think I'm trying to get the house myself, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's going to sell NFTs and it's his house. But the funny thing is, like, you brought up the securities thing. And so where does the line drawn, right? And I think, you know, when you have a real world asset and you're fractionalizing out portions of a house, but somebody's going to have to sign for the house, right? The deed's going to have to say somebody's name. There's going to have to be some sort of multi-sig wallet. How does that all work? And it's funny that we had this conversation today because I invest with a crypto hedge fund called Polychain. And I use them a lot to bounce ideas off of this guy, Ben, in particular there. You know, it's Olaf Carlson Wee's hedge fund, but you know, tomorrow we are going to have a deep dive about how do we manage these sorts of things and what does it mean? Is it a security? What does the SEC think? And I think people like the Bored Apes, who are obviously going down this path as well, they're going to release a token soon. It's ApeCoin. They said they're going to be going, they're talking to the government. They're going to be making sure. I think the path is going to be clearer in like 6-8 months. Mm-hmm. That's why all these things, like, number one, the tech's not ready. Number one, streaming on chain is not ready yet. These smart contracts that would fractionalize out aren't ready. These are just ideas that we want people ideating on and knowing that this could be something in the future. Now, we might just follow the Bored Ape path once they figure out what the SEC says, right? And like, there's people doing it already that, you know, we both know that, but is it legal? We don't know. But right. I want to follow the leaders in the space, and then we'll kind of be right behind them and figure out what we can do with it. So the answer to your question is I just don't know, but it's not ready yet anyways.
Yeah. Well, so, and I think what you're describing, and obviously we'll deep dive into what you guys are doing, but like there's kind of different models here. The Blau model, it sounds like, is more like upfront. It's a very transactional. I'm paying for some sort of tokenized music asset. The tech's probably not really up to it being everything that we'd like it to be. The laws are vague. There's a really cool vision there, but like we're not quite ready for it. What you're describing is more like, hey, you're coming into an ecosystem. You're hopefully a huge fan. You're getting all of these like fan club like perks, but like you said, on steroids. And then once you're in this, one of the rewards that make, you know, come back to you, maybe there is sort of streaming royalties. There's other ways we'll try and reward you that may or may not involve that sort of like streaming royalty piece. But it's that way of going about things as opposed to really upfront and transactional. Is that at a high level sort of how you would describe it?
You nailed it. Yeah, you nailed it. You're buying into the community and you're building out the community by being there, and you're evangelizing the community, and you're privy to all the things that we were never able to really do easily before without a lot of people involved and a lot of hands in our pockets. And now we can do it directly with you, which makes it a much cooler thing because we have all the control and also we can do crazy things. We can just do crazy stuff like drop tickets on everybody or free concert tickets and do all these crazy things. Now, there's another element once this gets, we're in a position where we can go to Live Nation and we can say, hey, we want 100 tickets locked out per show for Death Bats Club. Now, it doesn't have to be on chain because we're also in a position where we're playing big enough places where we can put 100 people on our guest list and they can walk up and we can have somebody checking and they have like a QR code or whatever they have. And then we hand them a ticket and they walk in. Right. But on smaller levels or larger levels, or if every artist starts doing this, they might go like, okay, like we need to figure this out. Like, and I did notice that, Slipknot and a bunch of artists recently have Live Nation tickets on Polygon. I saw like a bunch of wallets that were holding tickets. So they're obviously thinking this. My biggest thing is I don't want to walk into somebody else's system. I want to create the systems that we play in. And so, but we want to be powerful enough at the time that this all comes down that that Live Nation can't just come to us and go, that's the ticketing you're doing. Like we're going to say, no, we have our own ticketing.
Oh, this is getting into so much that I want to talk about. The Live Nation side, the NFT ticketing. Folks who've listened to the show know that I'm like really bullish on that and so excited, and feels like that's how we Trojan horse the rest of the world into Web3 is like tickets and concert tickets. And those are the other kind of two pillars of this. Like, how is this all going to revolutionize music? Why don't you give the sort of spiel on what Death Bats Club is for folks who don't know what the inspiration for what you're doing is, and that'll lead us into a more detailed conversation about all the rest of this.
Yeah, so Death Bats Club is basically the 10,000 NFT model where we release 10,000 tokens that was a membership card into the club. It also plays as a rarity token, the same way the Bored Apes does, where you might have a gold bat or a ghost bat, and those are bigger flexes for your, it's like your calling card across the internet, across Twitter and across your Reddit platforms or whatever it is that you do. So there's that kind of small fun layer. It's your Avenged Sevenfold Lambo. And then on top of that, we've added a bunch of fun perks where there's one of ones that you could go golfing with the band, or you go to dinner with us, or Zoom calls. We have the typical Discord setup where there's poker nights and movie nights, and we do giveaways every month. And then you also have no lines into any shows. We have a Web3 site being built out where the new record will start being teased through Token Gate, where you kind of have to have your MetaMask and you're just going to check your wallet. We're building out into the sandbox. We've already dumped about $1 million into building out that land and building out a social hub, a streaming platform, small video games. We are doing everything that you can do in Web3, and the Death Bats Club is the token in.
That's incredible. So let me ask, for your initial drop, you talk about being able to play golf with members of the band or get guitar lessons. And I think of like Gary Vee sort of being early in the model of like real utility, and he did you can do a FaceTime with him. You were buying that specifically in his model, right? You went in sort of knowing you were trying to buy the lunch with Gary Vee. For yours, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was you didn't know what you were getting, right? You bought in sort of all at the same level, and then like maybe the reveal was that you were getting a guitar lesson. Is that how you guys did it? And talk to me about really why you wanted to do this and why you did it the way you did.
Well, I've been in the space for about a year, and I've spent too much time in the Discords and too much time watching these things play out. And I remember when the apes launched and they did this model where it was, 0.08 ETH. It was more of like, hit the slot machine. You want to be in the club. All tokens are going to be great, but I might get something even better. And I saw the reaction between MeBits, which was a Dutch auction, and I saw the way the community really reacted with the apes, because it gave everybody like an equal footing, and it didn't just go to rich people that can afford to play golf, right? And what I loved about it, I met a kid in the Discord, and he saved up like $2,500, and he minted all of his life savings in apes and Bored Apes. And the kid's like a multimillionaire now because he wasn't going to sell them. He's from Argentina, but it's all the money he had, but he believed in the project, and he got like a trippy ape with a hat, and he got like all these cool things. And I remember I was trying to buy one off him for like 10 ETH on day one. It was crazy. And he wouldn't sell it to me, but we started talking on Discord, and I realized like how cool it was that this kid believed in the project, and he was being rewarded at not a high price, but like a low price. And so I think a lot of our fans are in third world countries. A lot of our fans aren't in the best economic situations. And also a lot of our fans don't even know what NFTs are. So it's really hard to get them to say, hey, you want to go to dinner with us? It's going to start at 25 grand and go down from there. I think it was kind of, we had to be really careful with letting the true fans in. And I think the price we had was a good one. So we wanted it to be fair.
And I think you guys were really smart about your approach. I know you did like a dipping the toe in the water first, and I want you to talk about it and to kind of see who in your audience even already knew about NFTs or didn't. Talk about how you kind of approached and rolled out this program, because I think it's really helpful for others who might be thinking about starting something like this, who maybe have a fan base, but that isn't necessarily NFT native.
Yeah, so we basically, we wanted to, and it was actually a big learning experience for us too, because we had this idea that we were going to put pieces of music on there. And I was having these talks with Mike Shinoda about it. And he's like, the music's actually irrelevant. It's all about the, what's in the hash. It's all about what's on the blockchain or whatever we want to call it. And I say that because I'm well aware that a lot of these are hyperlinks to other things, right? So, but I just want to get the terminology right. But the reality is it wasn't about the music. The music's always going to be listenable to everybody. And so the first NFT we did, we released 101 of these things called Into the Ether, which was a piece of art that we did with a guy who does a lot of our art, Cam Rackham. And we put a piece of music on it. And so what we did is we went to the fans and said, if you want one of these NFTs, get a MetaMask and just send us your address and we'll pick 101 people. So we got 5,000 addresses sent to us and we ended up giving out 101 and they just kind of sat there. And the people that didn't get them were like, whatever, it's a stupid JPEG anyways. And the people that did get them were like, whatever, I got this JPEG. Yeah. But then we started ideating what the Bored Apes had come out since then. And then Gary V, what he was doing. And then we're like, oh, it's a club. It's a membership. So that little beginning was like a little false start for us, but it was like, I'm glad we did it. And we knew we were going to do it just to dip our toe in the water. And I'm glad we did it because it sparked the idea of the Death Bats Club. So, but what we've done now is taken those original 101 or 101, and those are actually the most rare, like sought after NFTs at this point, because we've actually added utility to those. And so depending on the eye color, they all get certain things and they correlate with the Death Bats Club. So those actually trade at a much higher premium now because a lot of our fans understand NFTs now. But I will say that when we started Death Bats Club, we did a whitelist in the beginning and we only had 300 people sign up. And so we pushed the date back because we realized that people just simply didn't get it. And there was so much FUD about it, right? There was so much online, like this is a scam. The band's doing a cash grab. There's nothing they can offer us. They should do Patreon. They should do a GoFundMe. And we're like, guys, we don't need the money. That's not what this is about. Yeah. Like we're really trying to build an ecosystem here out. And so we made all those tutorial videos and then we pushed the date back. And then by the end of it, we had 9,000 people on the whitelist. But then we realized that a lot of people signed up on the whitelist, but they never were able to get Ether. And so that's another thing we figured out was that when we actually, because on day one, we had 9,000 people on the whitelist, we thought it would sell out instantly. We only did 3,000 sold. And the whitelist was over and we're like, what happened? So then we wrote a piece of code and we looked at all the addresses and 97% of them had never got Ether in them. Wow. And so at some point they got denied by their bank. It was one step too far. They got scared. They got denied by Coinbase. They were in a waiting period. Who knows? But it was bringing all these new people in. They simply didn't get the Ether. And so we had a slow, healthy rollout and everything sold out eventually. But there was a lot of things that we learned in that process, which was like, this is really the new world. And it's not as easy as it was for me because I've been in it since 2016, right?
Yeah, you realize you're in a bubble when you start to try to get somebody else in. And what was at that point, what was like the communication? Like, are you emailing folks? Like when you're like, oh, the holdup here was that folks don't have their ETH. We need to probably educate folks around that or help them through that. Like, was it on Discord? Like where are you communicating out then to continue to educate folks? Is it on Twitter?
So the first thing we did in the very beginning back in June or before June, we started a Discord. And most bands don't have a Discord. And if they do, it's usually dead because there's nothing to talk about, right? It's like Reddit's a perfect example of a platform that works for bands because you write a big post, I love this guitar solo, this song makes me feel this way, and then people kind of respond to it. The ephemera chat of a Discord doesn't really play into that unless you're pinning stuff and this and that. But what Discord does great is it talks about ever-changing markets. It talks about other projects. It has bots. It has excitement. It has, all these things that you can do. So early on, I started seeing that in art blocks, and I saw it in the Punks chat, which is where I really cut my teeth, and the Bored Apes chat. And so luckily back in June, I think it was before June, but we started a Discord and we got everybody to come over and we started showing people, if you have these NFTs, your name changes. You've got these abilities to do this. You can do links. We're going to talk about the band, but here's a section about merch, a section about guitar playing, a section about music, and then NFTs, and then we just kept like kind of feeding people information. And we had a lot of people in the space that were coming in to help other people. So it was really just a very gradual onboarding process. And now we're in a situation where if you go into our NFT chat, there's a bunch of people that simply know more about it than I do. When you see like on the cutting edge of what they're getting into, it may not be things I'm interested in, but they're into all these different projects, and I'm learning from them just as much as they're learning from us.
So you did have pretty good adoption then on Discord, luckily, from your fans. That was an easier lift than MetaMask and a wallet and Coinbase and all the rest of that. I'll highlight something I heard you say in another conversation, which was that I thought was interesting, was around when you did those 101, I think, and you had 5,000 people, you said, sign up and suddenly have wallets, and you were able to kind of look and see that I think it was only like 17 of the 5,000 wallets held any other NFTs, or clearly all of these had just started up in order to get your NFT. That was so smart to me because it shows you, okay, this is we really are going to have to do education here. Our fan base does need this, and that sort of slow bit by bit realizing what the next step of education to really get your fans into it. Like that struck me as a wise way to go about things.
Yeah, we got those 5,000 wallets, and it's very easy to look up on EtherScan or on Meta or OpenSea to see what's going on. And so I was like, hey, let's we're putting them in by hand, right? Because we want to make sure that they didn't go to people that were going to lose their keys, didn't have any experience. It was really important to us to get them to people that like had some sort of, they'd proven to us that they'd had a wallet before and whatever. So we started going through the names, and we must have gone through 100 and we saw nothing. And so I was like, dude, are these real wallets? Like, what is this? And our dev was like, let me write a program, and I'm just going to be able to look in all their wallets, and it will give us a color if there is something in the wallet. And so the next day we came back, he'd written the program, and he presses go, and it's just 17 people had NFTs, and everything else were empty wallets that had never been, no ETH had ever been moved, no coins, no transactions, no NFTs. And so we're like, okay, so we gave one out to each of those 17 people. And then we're like, well, what do we do with the rest of these things, right? And so then we said, okay, we'll write a program to see if they even change their name on OpenSea. And so if they put a name, then we knew that they cared enough that we gave those people, and we found 101. So it was like, if you put like Mr. Wiggles, we would give you an NFT because it was like more than anyone else had done, right? Which was just an empty wallet that just said account one with nothing.
Yeah. I want to talk about the economics of this. You were like, hey, we're not doing this for money. We're not doing a Patreon because like this isn't about the money for us. And this is something that I've thought about as I think about artists and bands partaking in this. Like, is there an economic loss factor here because you're giving somebody lifetime rights to a backstage pass or tickets or things that ordinarily you would sell as one-off things for a particular concert? Like, break it down, because I understand this is not why you're doing it, but like, are you making more money or losing more money on this club?
So I believe that if we create in the next 2 to 3 years like an ecosystem that everybody is completely happy with and they're very happy to be there, I believe we will make a lot of money. I believe the fans will make a lot of money on their tokens. I believe the whole thing will be extremely valuable. Like the experience will be valuable. And so if you break down like things like tickets and things like meet and greets, we've never charged for those anyways. Tickets we have, but we can always add another person on the guest list. It's not, when you go play somewhere, it's 10,000, 12,000 tickets sold. If we have 100 guest lists, we're never going to feel it, right? But it's a very cool thing for the fan. We've always done meet and greets, but we've always done blind raffles with our street team. So now we'll just have the people that have the NFTs get the first choice, and then we'll still do blind raffles. these are things that aren't that hard to put together. We obviously raised, I think it was like 3.5 million on the token. But then we bought land in Sandbox. We have a team building on that, which is, not to, I mean, we are on a podcast, so we can get in a little bit of the economics, but it's about 30 to 40 grand per lot to build that out, right? So it's going to cost us over $1 million to build out something that we feel is, to the stature we want to have it at. We've also given out tons of things. We've paid for artists to do collaborations. We're doing these shook boxes, which are it's going to cost us $10,000 to $15,000 every time we send those out, right? Just to get everybody the stuff they have. But I believe in the end, if people are happy in this world we've built and they're playing in the sandbox and they're having these relationships, and we're going to be able to sell them, an Avenged Sevenfold t-shirt in the metaverse, or sell them a couple tokens to see a live show in there, or to do all these things that aren't egregious. They're just simply parts of, this ecosystem that all works together. And I believe in the end, it'll be beneficial for everybody. But right now we're just not worried about the economics of it. We want to do cool stuff, and we know it's the future, and maybe a model will appear that's, listen, you can make a lot of money if you want. If you want to gouge everyone, that's the bottom line. You could, but we're just not doing that.
Yeah, well, I think you're taking a smart approach, and it's reminding me. I had a conversation with Avery Akinane, who's the president of Vayner NFT, and they obviously work with a ton of brands, Pepsi, et cetera, et cetera. And she was sort of echoing that sentiment in that she was like, most of these big companies are doing something they're trying to be kind of cost neutral right now, or they're spending money on it, right? They're losing money on it with the goal that then it's sort of a cost neutral program where they're reinvesting it all with the long-term vision that it makes you money in the long term. And to your point, also makes your early supporters money, right? So it's the love is being kind of shared around there. And that's what I hear you saying, which strikes me, the people who are doing this smart, that's exactly how they're thinking about it, of course, and taking that long-term orientation.
Yeah, we have a lot, we have our reputation on the line, and we have a lot, we've been a band for 22 years, and, there's a lot of different aspects. There's the music and there's the live shows. And then there's our back end of, economics, music 101. And then there's this, and they all have to exist, and they can't really, there's going to be people that don't understand it. There's going to be people that think it's a money grabber, this or that, but you could call us money grabbers by selling t-shirts and putting on concerts. I mean, the world works in a way that I want to see you provide that service for me. I'm going to go to your show. And, every beer that you drink actually helps the band because it's more money in the promoters' pockets, and they do analytics on all this stuff. It's not this as simple as people make it out to be. And when you do this NFT thing, I believe that if you can bring your fans into this new world, and the concerts, I think, is important for people that don't want to go to shows, the people that don't feel comfortable being in public, people that have PTSD, people that have anxiety, people that don't like the way they look. I think this is going to open up a whole nother revenue stream, but also a whole other perk for people that never had it before. And I don't think it's fair to just act like everyone should be doing everything for free just because they're in a band. But that's a lot of the attitude we get sometimes, where, if you actually look at the music industry, it's funny. They used to buy $15.99 CDs all day, and then it became streaming, and now it's $9.99, and the artists get paid nothing. But if you try to charge anyone for anything, you're like egregious for doing it. And it's like, whoa, like 15 years ago, like you were paying, for a little disc, $15.99, and VIP tickets were. It's just a funny way that the world has turned into this. Everything should be free, and if you charge for anything, you're a jerk. So it's a weird line we toe.
Yeah, I think it is changing back though. Like I feel like when the internet was first exploding, not even first, right? Like decades into it, all my news I got entitled and felt like I could see articles for free. Like, and now I'm paying for Substack art, like, writers that I like. Like I think we're starting to move back into as the world kind of fragments, right? Like, and people are burrowing into their niche and their particular taste. Like I probably have more disposable income now than I did in college when I was trying to get my free articles or whatever. But I do think people are starting to get more comfortable with the idea of paying for the particular creators that they love or the particular content that they love. And this is sort of part of that. I
agree, because if you think about it, there's too much out there. And then we find the things that we respect, and then we're okay with paying for it. Like exactly. I pay for the New York Times, right? And I pay for Sam Harris's podcast because I love
me too.
Sam Harris, right? And so
I love Sam.
Like I would never be able to live with just the black version where it's, you get like
I want
the
my
1
orange
hour.
making
I want
sense.
my orange. Yeah. I got to get the whole thing. And so Yeah, I totally get it, but I don't want to put myself in everyone's shoes because I just don't know. But at the same time, if everything's free, you're getting a lot of crap. You're
Right.
getting a lot of bad information. You're also getting a lot of bad apps, and you're getting hammered with ads. I think this whole ecosystem solves a lot of those problems, and we're just gonna have to see how it plays out, and it's gonna be a little while, but you need people with good intentions in the space building it out.
This may be obvious for some of the listeners or many of the listeners, but I think it's worth having you kind of articulate, which is why not just do a Patreon? Why is this obviously so much better and better for the fans and better in general than, what you could do in a non Web3 world?
When I talk about like our email list, we had this fan club called Deathbat Nation, and we had, I think it was 600,000 people on it, right? And people were like, why don't you just send 10,000 tickets out to them? And it was like, first off, what is an email address? Who knows if they're even good? Who knows if someone didn't sign up a million of them? Who knows if all these things, there was no proof of work. There's no proof of somebody putting in the time and the money to own one of these tokens, right? Imagine sending out 10,000 free tickets and on what? The tickets we sent out are on the blockchain, right? Are we going to send out a paper that says, here's a QR code to any show and just have it fly all over there were so many things that didn't make sense, but that was their argument, right? And then there's the argument of like, just do a Patreon. Well, no, we're trying to let you own your Patreon. We're trying to give you the ability to resell it back if you don't want to be a part of this anymore. Instead of just giving us $30 a month and being happy with the content, why not just buy this thing once, and then as the community grows, it either goes up or down in value, but the reality is you can sell it either for a loss or gain. You have control of your token now. You can't do that with Patreon. You can't do that with GoFundMe. All these things to me are predatory, and people call us the predatory ones, which is crazy. I want people to have the control, and we have the control to airdrop. We have the control to gate things off in a way that, let's have a party tonight. 10,000 of you are invited. You all have put so much work into this club. You're in the Discords every day. You're building this thing out. Here's how you're rewarded. Let's go to the sandbox tonight. You can only get in with a token. To me, that is a much more efficient way to run every single part of your business. And so Patreon to me is just simply give me cash and I give you, it's like, it almost feels dirty. I think the whole thing is dirty. And people would say the same thing about NFTs. And if they do think that about NFTs, I would say you need to dig a little deeper. It's not what you think it is.
I think people have this impression that it's like we're commoditizing or we're making everything a financial market, and they're like, that's my nightmare, like that's just a way for poor people to get screwed further or something. But it's missing the piece, which is like, we're already paying for shit and we don't get any lingering lasting value from that shit, that like all the money that I'm putting out that I then don't own the thing in the end. And that spin doesn't get sort of understood by I think people who are like,
no,
really,
because they've been conditioned to do it. Right? They've been conditioned to sign up on Facebook, get a bunch of people, Instagram, get a bunch of people. They pay you in likes and hearts. They say, thank you very much for all your data. You're paying in one way or another. Totally. And they hammer you with ads. And then you're paying for all these things anyways. You're right. You're going to pay for the concert ticket. You're going to go, like, are you telling me that you would rather have, Kiss charge you $1,700 every time you want to do a VIP thing, but what we're doing is egregious?
Right.
It's just so backwards.
They're like, oh, now you're making music a financial market, that you can trade and speculate on. I'm like, it's already a financial market. You're just not getting to participate. Like,
yes, everyone else is
You're just
Spotify
not a part
and
of
the labels
it.
are participating, and you're not participating, right?
Oh,
I was having this conversation. It's crazy.
Well, I was having this conversation yesterday around accreditation laws, because I'm like, on the surface, the line is that that's supposed to protect unsophisticated investors, which really just ends up being a proxy for poor people, because you don't have to take a financial test to be accredited. You just have 7 figures or whatever, and that's it's just kind of protecting really like rich people for getting to have these opportunities that a lot of other people aren't getting to have. And I feel like this Web3 world is cracking those doors open and saying, hey, like, music really well, you see what's hot and coming up, like, you now have the opportunity to participate in that market in a way that you never previously had. And that, like, it's amazing to me how that gets missed.
Yeah, and it goes back to the Vinnie Paul DAO, right?
Yeah,
People are like, some of the arguments were the dumbest one was they just want Matt's trying to get you to buy the house for him. Okay. Like that doesn't even make sense. But you know, it's like one of the most liked comments. And it's like, how are people liking this? Like, are you using your brain? And then the other one was, why don't you just why don't you just buy it and turn it into a museum? Because I'm trying to give you an opportunity. Yes, I know I can go buy that house. I have JPEGs that can pay for that house. Okay. Like I'm not trying to do that. Like I'm trying to get people that would never otherwise be able to be involved, have a vote and some sort of governance on what we do with this thing because it's important to people. And just these ideas that like we're trying to grift them and scam them is just so crazy. Like, it's like you would never be able to go in the bank and get $100 piece of Vinnie Paul's house, right?
Right.
But if we break this thing up into 10,000 tokens or we do 1,500 tokens, let's vote on it. Let's see what you guys want to do. We'll do anything you want to do, but you will own a piece of this pending the laws we're talking about. But the reality is that's the idea. The idea isn't to make any one person richer. Like, well, what if one person buys too many tokens? Well, then they own part of it. They own most of the house. Yeah. That's the way the world works. Like, then they get more votes. The same way they could go buy the house with cash right now and they will do whatever they want. They will bulldoze it if they want.
Right.
Like, what is the misconception here?
It's reminding me
very strange.
Not to belabor this too much, but I am having fun with this. It reminds me when I worked as the finance director for Andrew Yang's presidential campaign back in like 2018, 2019. And when he was like coming
cool.
up.
I like him. Yeah.
Cool. It was before he was like, before he would get well known, we would go and we would talk to these groups and he would talk about UBI and they'd be like, well, what about this group or like, the one that came up and now I'm going to shoot myself in the foot for saying this because why am I stepping into controversial stuff? But they'd be like, well, if you're an undocumented immigrant, like why aren't you getting the UBI? And we're like, guys, nobody's offering you any money right now. And all you can focus on is hate the idea because more people aren't getting it. Like we're at least offering something. Like it's those weird arguments that you're like, at least this is better than what was coming before.
Well, it's the fringes that shoot themselves in the foot, right? It's like this is way better than what we had, but you're going to fight for even more and you're going to get nothing.
Right, exactly. And you're going to end up, in Web 2 where it's all the old guards who have all the money in the world.
Axie Infinity is a game universe filled with cute, fascinating little creatures called Axies that players can collect as pets. Players aim to battle, breed, collect, raise, and build kingdoms for their Axies. There are and will be many varied gaming experiences for Axies, many of them having players compete with each other using complex strategies and tactics to attain top rankings or be rewarded with coveted resources. Others will have them complete quests, defeat bosses, and unlock in-depth storylines. There are countless unique Axies that players can collect with varying body parts and experiences. The Axie universe is a player-owned economy where the players can truly own, buy, sell, and trade the resources they earn in the game through skilled gameplay and contributions to the ecosystem. It's a digital nation where people come together globally with their Axies to play, earn, and live. Join the Axie revolution at axieinfinity.com/bankless. Polygon is Ethereum's largest and most vibrant scaling solution to date. With millions of monthly users and all of the biggest DeFi apps, the Polygon ecosystem has turned into a blossoming metropolis of DeFi activity. Transactions on Polygon are quick and cheap, allowing users the freedom to achieve their DeFi goals, all while being economically anchored to Ethereum. But Polygon isn't just the proof-of-stake sidechain. The Polygon team is building a suite of scaling solutions, including Polygon Hermes, Maiden, Nightfall, and Zero, all with different design choices in order to be optimized for all possible crypto use cases. If you're a developer who wants to build on the Polygon ecosystem, go to the link in the show notes to check out their fantastic documentation. And if you're a user who just wants to experience fast and cheap DeFi, you can bridge over your ETH or other tokens and start playing around with any of the thousands of applications that are available on Polygon.
I want to get into this ticketing piece. You obviously work with Live Nation. Give folks a sense, like I'm very bullish on NFT ticketing, but I feel like what we've seen right now is things like what the Mavericks are doing, where it's much more like, okay, we'll give you an NFT as a receipt. So you have this collectible moment from it, but the ticket itself is not an NFT. And my basic understanding of this is it's hard for a Live Nation or a Ticketmaster to sort of adopt such sort of a new model for things. Where are we on the path, in your view, to NFT ticketing?
It's a Spotify thing, right? It's like the giants are going to have to decide if they're going to go down that path, right? And is it going to be something from the outside, or is it going to be Live Nation waits till a big company builds it and they buy it, or are they going to go away altogether? What we're doing, which I think is extremely cool, is we're going to have POAPs live, right? You can scan stuff live, and we're going to have RSVPs where you can prove if you have an NFT and you go to the show, then we're going to airdrop you a GIF from that night, right? So it's going to be like a live version of that show, that particular show that you watched, and it's going to be a collectible. And then we're also going to add a token to it so that you can actually redeem multiples that will give you prizes on the website, right? So maybe if you get 120 of these things, they could be collectible covers, they could be how many shows you went to, they could be Pop Wonder collectibles, they can be whatever it is, right? But these tokens are going to be like almost like gamified way to get more things, almost like going to Dave and Buster's and getting a bunch of tickets. Like I'm going to go and play anyways, so it's cool that I have these tickets because now I can get a prize before I leave. I think that is the coolest thing to do. Give people incentives to want to hold on to their NFTs and make them do something. And I think like the idea of like having like Kobe's last game or LeBron scores, 70 or KD gets hurt that game. I think having that memorabilia as a ticket is extremely valuable and important and cool. So I think ticketing, it obviously makes total sense at some point to be on the blockchain. I don't know where we're at in it. I know that we're just going to go ahead and do it anyways.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing our own thing. And then I assume at some point Live Nation is going to come to us and go either stop that or can we work together or what do you guys want to do here?
Yeah.
But right now they're so far behind what we're doing. We just simply went to our booking agent and said, carve us out these tickets. We're doing this. If you want to book us, you're going to have to deal with it. And I hope more artists do that because then it might wake Live Nation up and do it. But you don't want people doing it in the wrong way, right? Like I'm so skeptical of big companies getting into blockchain. I do, as much as I believe in Web3 and I believe in everything we're building, I do see the Merlin, Elon, Jack argument of Web3 and letting the wrong people in, building out these things wrong. And I am keeping my eye on that and being skeptical. And I don't want to be in a position where we have to start working for somebody again.
Yeah. Have you been tracking the Punk 6529 thread around the fund he just launched? The Punk
No.
529 is launching this art fund. And anyways, he's got a number of really good threads of like, the odds are this goes the wrong way, right? Like the odds are that Meta comes in and with just like a little bit of apathy on the part of like our community, like we lose this thing because Meta's incentives and Zuckerberg's incentives and the VC's incentives are very high to make this about them and centralize this. And it sort of requires like constant vigilance on the part of like the early community to like care about it enough to not let it go that way because otherwise the incentives are so high on their end to make it go that way.
And you don't want to become those people, right? Mm-hmm. This is a transfer of wealth. It's a transfer of power. And you already see people that were in this thing early and then they start getting a little bit of power and then they're trying to start their own companies that do the same thing that the big companies are doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, I understand we're in a position where we're building this thing out ourselves and most bands don't want to do that. Like the Web 2 model is easier for them. Like do it, like build it for us, right?
Yeah.
But I like the idea of having the power to have an option.
That was actually going to be a question for me, which is like, would you say there's like a lot of artists that probably shouldn't do this? Like, should Justin Bieber go this route? Like, if I'm Justin Bieber, I'm like, depends on how intellectually curious you are about this fundamentally. Otherwise, just like sit it out until it's like, more built and easier and you don't have to be such a trailblazer. Like, I don't know. Is that how you feel about it?
I have a lot of respect for Justin's manager, Scooter Braun.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
There's a lot of people that I would, I hang around with a lot of DJs. They're people I roll with, not only because of NFTs, but we respect each other's music. A lot of them grew up listening to us. And then, things like NFT New York or Art Basel, we all kind of roll together, right? And their managers are smart people. They may be letting the bad guy in a little too much in some cases. Mm. They want to be cool with everybody. But I would never tell anybody they can't be involved. I think the more people that do it correctly, the better, right? And listen, there's going to be a battle and there's going to be bands that shouldn't be doing this, but as long as there's always the option to do it yourself and go it alone. But yeah, you're right. Like think about the next Spotify is owned by Spotify and then everyone's doing it and then they still get, and Spotify's not the enemy here. And even the labels aren't. These are just old deals, right?
Yeah,
They're good people that work at these things, but
totally.
The next Spotify might still put in, we're decentralized and you get your royalties quick, but we still take 80%. You don't want that sort of thing to happen. And then all of a sudden everyone's streaming there because it's easier for them because they made this really nice, platform that's easy to use and everyone uses it and it's hip, but they still destroy the artist's like ability to make any money and actually do cool things with it. So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting. I mean, we've taken our power and we're going to run with it. I tell you that. We're not signing back on.
And I think my point with Justin is not even him specifically necessarily, but it's like we're in a phase right now, and not that this shouldn't always be the case, but like especially right now, it feels like if you're in this because you want to build, you want to improve your relationship with your community, you want to like, you know, put on steroids your community relationship or your fan experience, like that's why you should get in right now, because it's a lot of work to be doing this in these early days. Yeah. So if you're somebody who's just getting in because you think you can make a lot more money, but like you're tired and you're busy and you like don't really have a need to like further your fan relationship, like that to me feels like sit it out until it's maybe at a more evolved place, because the people who are pioneering this, people like yourselves, like I imagine it's a shit ton of work that you're putting into this and thinking about this. Like this is a full-time job.
It's all day. We had to hire, we hired a girl that's been with us. Her name's Courtney, and she created our first web zine, like our website, like that was not official, but it was a fan site back in 2004. And she's been with us. And the day she quit, we hired her to run all of our social media and web. But we never did much on it because it always just felt weird on Instagram and Facebook tests. It was just always cheesy. But when we took this on, she jumped in the space, learned it, lives it, breathes it, and we made her the project manager, right?
That's awesome.
So it's something that we've dove into, but it was like we had to delegate a bunch of stuff. And she went out and found the most amazing Discord mods and people that can build bots. And then we went on the side of building out our team on the dev team, like who's going to build these contracts for us. Who's another childhood friend who left Web 2. He was a cybersecurity guy at Barracuda, but he quit his job to do Web 3. And so we're building this team out, but you need a lot of people and you need to be on it, right? It's like it will just sit there and do nothing if you're not constantly innovating and constantly seeing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. I want to ask a follow-up on the ticketing side. We veered off there, but one of the things that I'm understanding is one of the obstacles here is like, obviously your Ticketmaster and your Live Nation, my sense is like, they like the gig, they like the deal they have right now. They have a lot of control, a lot of power. So they're not necessarily like chomping at the bit to switch to a ticketing system where the royalties are going to the artist or, not to them, so to speak. And one of the challenges to changing this is I've come to understand, I think, like these platforms actually own a lot of these big venues. So if you're a big
Live
enough
Nation's bought everything.
band,
Yeah.
if you're you and you're these big bands, you need you literally can't tour properly without the venues that they own. So they have a tremendous amount of power because like, even if you wanted to like go off and use Get Protocol and issue your ticketing through their platform and do something totally different, like you literally wouldn't be able to book your concerts. Am I right on that? Is that how this works on the inside? What is that?
So
dynamic?
Years ago, we used, we would find different promoters that were specializing in every individual market, right? These two guys named the Franks were two legendary guys. They always had Metallica. We always used them in certain markets. And then other things, we use Live Nation, and there was all these like individual promoters, but they would always fight with each other and get the best deals for the bands. And then they had to work for their money, right? They had to like prove out that they could sell out this venue and give you the best deal as an artist and make sure your rider was perfect and make sure everything was great. And one thing our manager at the time was always concerned with was Live Nation was obviously not only buying the venues, but they were buying out all the promoters, right? And one of the last great promoters that we'd ever used, the Franks, the last Metallica tour we did with Metallica, was a stadium tour in 2017. Live Nation bought them out, right? That was it. They were done. And it was like one of the last ones that like, now it was like, we're going to play Live Nation venues and we're going to get what they're going to pay us because you have no other choice. Now, Live Nation has been extremely fair to us, and they've been extremely fair to a lot of artists. They haven't done anything egregious yet, but with all that power, it definitely makes you raise an eyebrow, right? Because you really don't have an option. And then this comes up, 5 years later, and it's like, okay, yeah, like they don't need to change. They don't need to do anything because how is anyone else going to get their foot in the door?
Yeah.
Live Nation even went as far as buying my friends Benji and Joel's company, Veeps, which is a streaming company, which during COVID, it was just taking off, right? And they came in and said, well, we're going to wire all of our venues to be stream ready. So any band that comes through can instantly stream their stuff, and then we own the company. So now they own the streaming, they own the venue, and they own the ticketing.
So how do we
And
change
so
it?
it's very hard because, again, they've never done anything bad to us. They've always treated us fair, and they've given us great deals. And everyone in rock, they've done great stuff, right? I don't think Rapino or any of those guys are bad guys at all. But I think we obviously would like to see it divvied up a bit where we can have the discussion of blockchain ticketing. Now, the idea that I can go on OpenSea right now and find a Live Nation ticket on Polygon means they know this is going on, and you wonder what they're going to do. But again, it's the old argument of who's on the blockchain and who has the power. Like if we're doing our tickets on the blockchain and we're, doing this thing with Death Bats Club, the obvious, connection would be like we would team up with Live Nation.
Right.
But how much power do we want to give them? And do we want to even go down that path, right? We're going to be doing it anyways, but are they going to be distributing the other tickets that we give out that people aren't in the Death Bats Club that are at the show? Is that going to still be Avenged Sevenfold, but on Polygon? And then, like who owns the rights when those things start trading, right?
Yeah.
Like who is that?
Who's writing the
worked into
smart
deal?
contract piece, right? Like, because that's the thing that feels like such a no-brainer to me. What's so exciting about it, right, is of course like the royalty side of this, right? Which is now you put on an epic show, and every time that ticket resells, Avenged Sevenfold can have a cut of that resale, or robots are come and buy up a bunch of tickets and resell them, or scalpers or whoever. And now at least to me, it's about the artist still getting to see a piece of that. But the concern, and look, it's not, to your point, like it's not like somebody running Live Nation is evil and I don't want them to get a piece of it, but like that's not the point of it for me. Like,
Totally.
I want those royalty sales going to the artists themselves, but it's like, how do you make that happen with an actor that has so much power?
Yeah. And there's also another side to it, right? Like imagine, maybe not Kid Rock's not a good example because he's got like that hardcore fan base, but imagine I don't know. Let's say you're Kid Rock. And you're going to put on a show in a venue that's not a Live Nation venue, and you're not going to use their ticketing, and you're not like that might go for a while, but Live Nation does bring a lot of value. They've got they're a powerhouse, right? And so it's an interesting thing where what will probably happen is there will be an average of what sells aftermarket, and the smart managers are going to go to Live Nation and go, this is what the secondary ticket sales are worth. You need to cut us in on that. Now, it might not be in a smart contract. It might just be
through the platform, like an OpenSea platform.
Take our word for it. Yeah.
2%.
So who knows what it is? I would rather have it be on a smart contract, obviously. Like, I want to know where my money's at. I want to know that it's funneling into the wallet as soon as someone makes a purchase, right? These are things that can exist, so they should exist. But yeah, I think it will be some sort of like middle ground for a while, I'm sure. Because listen, if I see our tickets selling on the secondary market with our name on it and Live Nation on top of it, and I see a bunch of action happening on OpenSea, I'm going to go to our manager and go like, yo.
Yeah.
Like,
where's my piece on that? Yeah.
What's going on here? Yeah. Like what contract did we sign for that show? Like what's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I want to talk about like your personal collection and trading strategy. And this can maybe get us a little bit into your background, which, you kind of have alluded to this. You've been in the space since like very early days. I was saying this before we hopped on here, but like you seem like you have a real pulse on things, right? Like you talk about seeing a CryptoPunk early on and just like being like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like I like this. If I feel this way, other people are going to feel this way. And so buying up a bunch of CryptoPunks. What has your journey been? What NFTs are you excited about right now? And what really is your kind of trading strategy if you're doing that?
So I've learned a lot, right? I've bought into the FOMO. I've bought the top. I've bought the bottom. I've done it all, right?
Rite of passage.
And to be honest, the one NFT that I feel that the NFTs that I will never sell, it's CryptoPunks. I feel they mean too much to what we're all building. I love the idea that Larva Labs does nothing. I didn't sign up for them to give me utility or put a CryptoPunk on a Louis Vuitton bag. I love it as a collectible of what this space means and what the potential is. And then I also like a lot of other things, but I also believe they run cycles. They run cycles of being cool and then they're not. And I believe that protocols are very hard and they take a long time to build out. If somebody's promising you that there's going to be a video game and there's going to be this and that, then just stay away, because the reality is I've built a video game. It took 2 years, and my best friend in the world makes Call of Duty. He's made every Call of Duty that's ever been made, and it takes hundreds of millions of dollars and lots of people to make something worthwhile. So the NFTs that I like have great communities. I try to get into them low. I don't try to pump them. I try to like grab a few of them. And if I'm trading purely on financials, I grab 3. I'll sell one back to make my money back. I'll have a rare usually that's early on, and I'll hold that. And then I'll sell the other one for a nice profit. And then I'll hold like the rare one. There's always different strategies. I just got into NFT worlds today because I believe there's something very cool to be built out with that, how they've kind of connected with Minecraft. And the same way that Sandbox is like a whole different world of protocols where you have to, there's no code involved. You have to learn the Sandbox thing. I think there's something very interesting about NFT worlds where you can build on a land with Minecraft, which there's a million people around the world that are really good at building Minecraft. So to me, that's a useful NFT. I'm very excited about gaming NFTs. This company Shrapnel that's building out a AAA game that it's like an extraction game where it's play to earn, but it's also like you own all the skins and all this and that. But the NFTs, like, I just kind of follow the culture, like Alien Friends or Cool Cats. I think Cool Cats are so innovative. It's so fun to have a cool cat. The way their website works and the music and the vibe. I love the vibe. I love the Cryptodes vibe. I love like when like the old school punk dudes get into something. I kind of follow that. I've got a lot of alpha groups on like Telegram where we're all kind of talking about what we're into, but mostly it's based around punks. So I don't know. It's just kind of feeling things out. I'm good friends with Banks and he moves the market a lot, but I definitely don't want to be involved in things that people get rugged on, It's like, that's not something that I think helps the space. I think using NFTs purely as a speculative tool to make money is a little gross. I like the idea of like getting in things that I want to be a part of and then people that are innovating, right? Like I watched some of I looked at the Cool Cats new website. I'm like, oh, I want that so bad. So I called our guys.
Yeah.
I'm
I
like,
was literally just on it today too.
Yeah. I'm like, it's so cool. Like my little cat wallet thing. And like, here's your pets and here's your house. And I'm like, oh, we need something like that. So, like go back to the drawing board. And so I like seeing the innovation, because they're obviously building something bigger than a pump and dump. It's not, it's something different.
Yeah. I was on the website today and I guess I don't know if I hadn't been on it since they added the music, but I was like, oh yeah, I'm into this. Like, it's just like this
so
beautiful,
cool.
calm, lilting music. And it like, in the middle of my hectic work day, I'm like, okay, nice.
And it feels like you're like in Zelda or something, like you're top down, like old Nintendo Zelda. And it's like, listen, like how much value do those things have in our lives? And to me, they've had immense value. Yeah. Zelda like is one of the most prominent things in my childhood. Yeah. And so when I get a feeling like that, like a sense of adventure, like, oh, there's an apple falling from the tree. What does that mean? Or there's a graveyard. Like, oh, let's go dig up some graves. Maybe there's some treasure. Like things like that. Like I'm 40 years old and that will never leave me. That's like, and I want to create that experience for fans. And I think it kind of rolls into, well, what does it mean to be a band these days? Well, you can be all those things. You can be a full ecosystem for adventure, finance, shows, music, community. It can all roll into one. As long as you don't have bad intentions, I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's the Jim McNeilis. I think his pinned tweet, right, is like NFTs have brought like childlike wonder back into like adulthood or something like that, and it's sort of what you're describing, like you feel like you're a kid again playing a video game for the first time.
Absolutely.
So a couple last questions. I know we're running up at time here, but so you say you invest via Polychain, like a crypto specific hedge fund. Talk a little bit about what that means or looks like. Is it sort of like traditional, but they just only invest in crypto? Like how does that fund work? I'm not familiar.
Yeah. So I originally bought my Bitcoin around the 2015, 16 era. And then when Ethereum came out, I bought Ethereum. So I'm one of those jerks that has a lot of that from earlier, right? When it wasn't
You're crypto rich. We got it.
Yeah, but a lot of people, like, they see me buying CryptoPunks. It's like, how can you afford that? It's like, I don't know if I would write that check these days, right? Like it's something that is different when you're using coins that you've had for 7-8 years, right? And it's like, so the whole idea of the space at the time was like, I believed in internet money. I didn't really understand the whitelist or the white paper of like what it was exactly. And then as time went on, I started understanding it more and more. And then smart contracts was like, oh, I get it. And so then I became obsessed with crypto, and then I was buying VeChain and Cardano and Solana. But then there was so many things. And then I became like the guy that everyone texts of like, you got to get this, you got to get that, you got to get this. And I was like, I can't keep up with all this. You know, I can't, because the market kind of rises and falls with Bitcoin anyways, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're going to have some sort of protocol that is just totally breaks the mold. And you've seen some of them like Polkadot and these different ones that have done different things that have kind of broken out from this like this incubator seed phrase stage. And so when we got the invite to invest with Polychain, I was like, this is genius because now I can just hold Bitcoin and Ethereum. I don't have to worry about all the other crap. I'm going to let Olaf worry about the crap. And so what I did was I just took funds and I sent them to them. And what they do is they have, I don't know how much I can give away, but they have like a coin fund. And then they have like a more of a traditional crypto hedge fund where they go and they help companies that have great ideas build out these protocols, but they obviously get money in early. And so you put half your money in the tokens, which they're investing in. So they might have Polygon and Bitcoin and Ethereum and every shitcoin you can think of.
Yeah.
And then they have these other ones where they're building out Polkadot or they're building out the Internet of Things, or they're building out like all these things that they're early on and they're helping with, and they have engineers there. And so what I've done is I've just said, I'll hold my 2 coins, you guys do everything else. And then but they've been great for other things. Like we brought them some other things that they looked at and they ended up investing in. And so we kind of, when I talk about the Vinnie Paul thing, I'll call Ben or I've called him about our own Death Bats Club and be like, what do you think if we started a DAO, like a mini DAO, how would that work? And then, so they're great people to bounce ideas off of because they're trying to navigate the space as well. So it's been very, very useful.
That's awesome. Do you think you'll be into like music investing? I mean, I don't know to the extent that you do that now or work with like up and coming bands, but like thinking about this, potential future where like you're buying into ownership of an up and coming band or a song of theirs or something, like, do you see that being something you'd like want to dabble in the future?
So I invested in a company called TuneCoin, which is going to try to, they're very new. This is very early seed money. They are going to try to go and convince Spotify and Apple Music and all the labels that they need to be on blockchain. And they have a lot of reasons. The CEO, his name is John. He's very smart. He convinced me that he could do it. I told him I think it's a long shot, but I will help him in the battle. So things like that, I want to try to change the industry. With individual bands, I would gladly buy all the tokens of all the bands. I want to do it from a fan perspective. I have helped bands that are starting to dip their toe in the space. I've always felt dirty about taking money from them. I just want them to get in it and feel good about it. So I haven't invested in that way. I've just been more investing in the traditional finance stuff. And then I want to help bands with my knowledge. And then if a protocol comes along that I'm like, this is really good and we can help, and then they need Avenged Sevenfold to kind of push along the agenda, then we'll look at it. We've done a couple of things.
If like your everyday kind of retail investor type who's in this space is really interested in getting exposure, financially speaking, to like what's happening in music and NFTs, do you have any recommendations on like what they should start looking into? Understanding we don't give financial advice. This is just like, do your own research. Like what would be things they should start investigating? I
think we're in a period right now where I wouldn't feel comfortable giving any clear direction because I'm not moving on any of it because I don't think it's ready yet. And I don't know, I can't see through the fog right now. I can't see, like, I think buying people's publishing already exists. I think it's interesting. And I think it gives a lower barrier of entry because a lot of times it's big companies that buy publishing, but I've never been sold on publishing being worth enough in our lifetimes.
Oh,
I think
interesting.
I think the big companies that buy it, there's a much bigger play and you can borrow off it and you can borrow off the proposed worth in 30, 40, 60, 100 years. Buying Bob Dylan's catalog is brilliant in 200 years and in 100 years. I don't think it makes sense for somebody that's got 20, 30 years left of their life. I don't think it will ever make its money back. It's obviously an overpay. Bob Dylan understands that, and it'll make money in a lifetime or a couple lifetimes. So the fractionalized thing as an individual, you'd want to get in early on artists that you believe are going to grow, right? Like a Nas is probably as big as Nas is going to get and you're buying older tracks that you kind of see what they've done. And so I just have a lot of things I think about when I'm thinking about that sort of thing.
That's fascinating. And I do have a few more minutes here because I also want to, you have a podcast coming out that I want to make sure we kind of talk about and let folks know where they should go to check that out. But that's a fascinating thing. So when you talk about buying publishing, which is what we're, one of the models we're looking at, does that mean like buying the masters? Is that like, you referenced Scooter Braun, like the Scooter Braun Taylor Swift fight? Like, is that about publishing rights? What does that specifically mean if you buy publishing?
So there's two types of rights. There's the masters, which is the recording.
Okay.
Then there's the publishing, which is the songwriter. And so when the labels traditionally own the masters, right? They own that, they own that particular recording of a song. But the publisher is usually the artist who wrote the song, and then they can do publishing deals where they get advances on it, and the publishing company will take like a little cut. So when you buy publishing, you're buying the songwriting royalties of that particular recording. So what Scooter Braun had was he had the masters. So Taylor Swift, after a certain amount of years, was able to re-record her songs
because she had the publishing rights.
because she had the publishing rights.
Oh, this is very helpful. What an education in music economics.
So you actually, so when someone goes and pays $300 million to Bob Dylan, they're buying the songwriting publishing. And when someone like Metallica gets their masters from the label, they've agreed to a deal that they'll do more records for the label in return, that after 7, 10, 15 years, the master recordings of the Black Album or all these legacy things would be given back to them. Now, then they start their own label and they have the actual recordings that everyone grew up listening to. Now, the problem now is that with streaming, the streaming companies have given equity to the labels with the idea that the labels own the masters. Now, the streaming would never give equity to somebody that doesn't have the masters. The streaming people know they need those recordings to make their business work. So they cut a sweetheart deal with the labels. The labels don't cut the artists in, though they say they do. And then we get our bad royalty based on a sweetheart deal that they get from the bad cut.
Wow.
So artists nowadays that are trying to get their masters, it's not really possible because of the streaming environment. And so that's what I meant earlier by trying to get those old masters into Web3. There's a wall there.
Yeah.
There's a wall of like, no, we do things this way, and here all your stuff is behind it. So the artists moving forward that go into Web3, that's great, but you're not going to see a really easy solution of all the stuff prior.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I was gonna draw back to that analogy you were saying, and I was actually thinking about this back when we were talking about it an hour ago or whatever, which, because being a Taylor Swift fan, like that was sort of my introduction to this whole world, and the fact that artists maybe don't always get the best deal and they don't own their own works and all the rest of it. So like the challenge right now being, okay, or let me ask it this way, is one of the things that's being talked about for moving forward for new artists who aren't already signed would be investing in either masters or publishing. Like that's something that's for this Web3 world, the fans could in theory own a part of either. The challenge there is then those artists are going to have a hard time getting onto Spotify, having a good relationship with Spotify. Is there a challenge for them then on these traditional streaming platforms because of that relationship with the labels who now won't own those masters?
I think the streaming platforms will be fine. They'll let you on. But I think if you're going to promise things like that, so this is why we're in that gray area where nothing's really clear, right? It's if you're a new band and you play in front of 300 people and you sell a token to crowdfund your new record, right? Well, then you can decide, is it going to be the master? Is it going to be the publishing? Is it going to be for a certain amount of years? Is it going to be kind of just open-ended? You can do whatever you want. But when it streams, you're going to want it to be somewhere that's accountable. And that you can simply instead of getting a check from Spotify 12 months after it was played, and then you take a US dollar and then you try to turn it into Ethereum and then you just say, hey, everyone, just believe me, this is all we got. So you need it from the top to be like this trickle down effect where you can see everything and it's accountable. And then everyone can go like, okay, I feel like I'm not being taken advantage of. Right now, none of those things exist in a perfect situation. Because if you do go to a new streaming platform, you're going to go like, okay, well, we're making our master, we're making our record, but you got to download the XFN app. And that's the only place you're going to get to hear us because that's the only place that's going to be accountable on the blockchain. What John's trying to do is say, okay, well, even if you have that new platform that comes out, let's get the old platforms on another coin and they can all meet up in the wallet. Then you can exchange it out to whatever currency you want and then distribute it. And that's going to be better. And it's going to actually lure the new artists who don't want to be off chain to stay with Spotify or to stay with a record label, because at least there's accountability. And so that's his big play on it, right? There's going to need to be both. You're going to need to like fix all these problems to make this work, because there's a lot of power and a lot of people don't want to give that power up.
So the thorniness is getting clearer here. Let me ask this question. You're talking about how owning publishing rights or being a fan who owns publishing rights like probably isn't going to pay out the way you'd like it to, for it to be really a sound investment. But it makes sense if you're a big label who's trying to be around in 100 and 200 years and you can do all sorts of other stuff with it. Is the master's recording sort of different to you from a retail investor perspective? Like if, a new band says, we'll give you, 50% ownership divided among these number of tokens to the master recording, is that a better economic bet, or am I like still kind of off base?
Nobody pays for music anymore. So if you could own like a Cardi B song or something that's very popular, you're getting, and we could look this up, it's like 0.001 cent on every play. And then it's going through the royalty system of the label. And then you're getting it trickled down, right?
So the problem is Spotify is only paying a tiny fraction for that, paying you a tiny fraction for that play.
Yeah,
so now you owning that is only getting a tiny fraction. Like the money is being made by these companies that own equity in Spotify.
Yes.
More so than the music itself. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
And even Spotify pays out 80% of its money to artists. They actually have a really good rate. It's just that it goes through more filters, right? And so you'd have to be very careful with what artists you're buying and what their deal is, right? These are things that you'd have to really look at. Like if you have, this rapper that you love, but he's got a crazy deal and you buy a little bit of the mastering, like who knows how many filters it's going through, right? But if he does it direct to consumer, like on TikTok, or it's something that's like, there is no label and there is no this or that, then it could be extremely valuable. But then again, you have all these Web 2 things like how's the money coming in? Is it ads? Is it Spotify's $9.99 a month? Is it the free tier? There's so many things that if you put it all on chain, it would be very, very clear. But right now, the reason why artists don't worry too much about their masters unless you're like a megastar is because there's not much money there, right? It's just, there was money there when you paid $15.99 for a CD, but there's not with the streaming age. So it's kind of changed. Publishing, there's more money in publishing for sure.
That's fascinating. So it's not just a it's not just a matter of sort of replacing the labels with the fans, right? Because the way the economics are, the streaming platforms are in there. Like it's more complicated than just being like, yeah, we'll just transplant this one group for another group. There has to be all sorts of distribution platforms that are conforming to that new dynamic. So it's
and the distribution's key, right? Because we could go to our fans and stream them music all day. You need that pool of money coming out of like that subscription of everybody's there, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's being distributed. Like say it was Spotify and there was no label. Spotify giving out 80%, but collecting all that money, I think everyone would be pretty happy with.
Sure.
And I think even the fans buying a little bit of the publishing, like as an artist, you could give up 20% to your fans. Spotify keep 20% and you're still making 30% more than you'd make with a label.
Yeah.
Right. But then the question is, well, what does a label provide? Well, you still have to hire a publicist. You're going to have to hire a marketing person. I'm of the belief that all those things can be whittled down and you'd be in a much better position.
Yeah. But
the labels might have a good case and they could say, well, most people don't want to do any of that work. They're not going to hire those people. We come in and do all that for them.
Handle that. Well, it sounds like an industry standards problem, right? You have these industry standards that emerged in a different era, and now they probably should be renegotiated. But
yeah.
The label's making their case. You're a new artist who just wants to be signed, right? And you see that as like the way to fulfill your dream of being an artist. And so, things don't really change. But
yeah, so we famously went to court 3 years ago with our label over the 7-year clause. And this is before we knew about JPEGs and about NFTs. But it was our fight to get our masters back.
Wow.
And they would not even have that discussion with us.
So tell me that. So what's the 7 years clause?
So what was the outcome? There's a law in California that you can't enter into a entertainment contract with any entity for longer than 7 years. It's been obliterated in the acting world, Hollywood. The only industry that's held on to it still is the music industry. And what happens is artists use it as a ploy to renegotiate their deals. And we said, the only way we're renegotiating is we want our masters back, and then we'll do more records for you. We just want our masters back. Give them back in 15 years. We don't care. Like we want to be able to have a route or like a road to get them. And they just weren't going to talk to us about it. So we left the label and we said, sue us. So they did. And so we went to battle, and we all ended up having to settle because it was costing us both sides millions of dollars, and the law still isn't changed. But the law gets tested every once in a while. But it had to do with this fundamental right of like, we have no path back to our masters because of streaming.
Mm-hmm. You settled, but do you have a path to your masters now?
Nope.
It's so outrageous. I don't understand. Whatever. I guess I'm being idealistic. Like, I don't understand why these, like, let the artists have their masters. It feels so.
I know. So our
bizarre.
plan is we put out our last record on Warner. That's part of the settlement, and then from then on we'll be a decentralized into the ether.
So why do they hold on so tight to these masters? Is it so important to them to have it because that's the leverage they have with these streaming platforms?
Yes, that's what I was saying.
That's
earlier,
that's why it matters so much to them. It's not because the masters themselves are making the money. It's their leverage to say this is why the industry still needs us. Basically,
the masters make the money, but it was a leveraging tool. Now imagine a different world. Imagine you're Metallica and you just came off of a 12 million selling Black album, and Metallica doesn't have to do any more records for you. And Metallica walks in, and there's no streaming at this point, and they say, well, the next one's worth at least 6 million, and the one after that's worth 6 million, and then maybe 5, and then maybe 3, as a career happens, because they've just had a behemoth record, right? Mm-hmm. And they go, well, we'll sign 4 more records with you, but we want all the masters back. That's the only way we're doing it. And the label looks at it and they go, like, they don't see streaming coming. They just see money, CDs, Metallica, we've got them for 4 more records. Great deal, right? It'll take years for all that stuff to work on the catalog end, right? So Metallica can make that deal, and a lot of artists did. Now that deal is like does not exist because they know they can't sell $15.99 CDs. They know they're not going to make any money on the recordings, and the only money they are making is on the streaming services. And the streaming services don't want anything to do with them if they don't have the catalog. So when artists come in to say, I want my masters, it's laughable. Why would we ever give you the catalog? Right? And so that's where we're at.
And so if an artist today, like, one place this could start is like artists just start demanding that, they start refusing to let labels have their masters. So if like if there's a young artist who comes in, the path they would go then without a label is, what is it? Is it TikTok? Is it YouTube? Like, who are the people who should go the labelless route, and who are the people you're like, if that's the career you want, you still probably have to sign to a label and conform to their shitty masters rules?
Well, I would never conform to the shitty masters rules because
you're like,
it doesn't mean that because now people are getting smarter, right? And there was nothing to see back in 2001 when we signed our contract. There was no streaming, wasn't really on the horizon. Right. And so I think a lot of artists that are hip hop artists or emo rap or, pop, they're breaking on TikTok anyways.
Right.
And they're breaking on YouTube anyways. And the labels are actually trying to figure out how they can get their artists to break on TikTok and YouTube. Mm-hmm. So they're in control. And if they can just do it DIY as long as they can, then that's probably what they should continue to do. And the tools will be built out for them to easily monetize in the next year or two. But right now, I don't see the clear answer. Back to your investment question, I don't see it.
Do the labels have the relationship with radio? Like if I'm trying to be like a very mainstream pop star, do I kind of want a label because they're what's going to get me played on Hot 100?
So yeah.
Or is that your manager?
But no, it's the label, but it's becoming very, very irrelevant. The idea that our kids listen to anything on Hot 100, they're listening to TikTok. They're listening. I
listen to Spotify Hot 100.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all those things, they're irrelevant now. They don't have a market share. And so again, the labels, what they're gonna do, they'll get you number 1 on Top 100. They know it doesn't mean a damn, and then they're gonna go swing it around with all their friends and say, we got a number 1 hit on the radio. And all the old heads are gonna go, that's great. Like, oh, you guys are killing it. But if the kids don't care, then it doesn't mean shit.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for this education in the way this all works. Like I totally see it. It's a very thorny, complicated process. Do you have a bet? Like, do you think we do get there? Like, you think we get to this place where like it's on chain and so there's like an easy, you're not waiting 24 months or a year before you get your revenue from the stream played. You're getting it more instantaneously. You're also, it's flowing to the fan that supported you early on. Like, do you see us getting there? And do you have a time frame in which you think we get there?
I've been alive 40 years. I've been cognizant of what's going on for about 30 of those. I've never seen, and as much as I know about the past, I've never seen a better technology than the one we currently use and seen that go away. I've always seen the adoption, even though it's slow, whether it's electric cars or it's cell phones or whatever it is. When something's clearly better and more efficient, we get there eventually. So I have 100% confidence. I would not put my band's reputation and my own personal, whatever it is at stake. I wouldn't, if I didn't truly believe that this was the future. I think it will be much quicker than we think. It happens quick, happens swiftly. I think easily in 2 years, we're having a much different conversation, maybe 1 year, where we start seeing the emergence of these things really happening. And every day we are reminded that we're on the right path when people like Nike get involved and Adidas buys land in the sandbox and, Jay-Z sells Tidal to Jack and he puts a CryptoPunk as his avatar. You start seeing these people that are kind of pulling the strings on where this is going. And I think it's going to be very interesting really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have to have you back on when that fog starts to clear a little bit and you start to see the path a little bit more. Let me know, and we'll do part 2 of this conversation and be like, here's how it's starting to play out. This new Tidal's now doing this thing. And speaking of having another conversation, I don't know, it sort of ties in. Your podcast, you have launched a podcast with one of your bandmates, Bees, I believe, B-E.
No, so Bees is actually he's a legend in the metal space. He's always worked for magazines. Like he's like one of those media guys that like, so he actually came to us, he bought a token and he started getting obsessed with decentralization. And he came to us with this idea that instead of doing these breakdown videos, which we used to do where we'd kind of pull Pro Tools apart and show people how the songs were written, talk about it. He's like, let's do it as a podcast powered by the Death Bats Club. And we'll give out tokens that kind of commemorate the podcast, do some merch drops. But we'll talk an hour about people that were involved in the song and just give people something to listen to. And the idea was like to do it on a decentralized platform and kind of spread out those royalties. But that's when I found out that everything just isn't quite ready yet. So,
it's always in doing it yourself. I learned this myself in recent projects I've been involved in. I'm like, our legal infrastructure is not there yet.
Yeah. And so the legal stuff I'm cool with like foregoing. It's honestly just like, there's no platforms that can provide us what we need yet at the scale we need it. We've looked into a lot and they don't quite do what we're looking for. So that could be tomorrow and it could be a year from now, but we would like to get the podcast on chain and have people see. I'm okay with getting a bunch of people to go to a new platform for a podcast. The music, it gets a little hairy because it's like, it's too big of a pool that you're pulling from. Yeah, you got to download this other thing. Podcast, I'm cool with going like, hey, if you want to hear us talk about these songs, like you got to download this thing. Sorry. And so maybe it's like a little, dipping the toe in the water, but it doesn't exist yet. People say it exists, but we've done some research and it's shaky at best.
And the vision there is like, hey, you download the special thing and then like you have like you get tokens for listening, like you become an owner of the platform itself by being a patron of the platform essentially. And by patron I mean like you're listening and you're engaging on it. Is that the sort of goal? The goal would be that it's a big enough podcast that people are paying a subscription just like a Spotify subscription, and then the money's being divvied out from the platform, and then we could see it on chain, and then we could write a contract that would just provide, even if you don't listen to the podcast, you're just a part of the Death Bats Club and we want you to partake. And so as in like the funds that are coming in for paying for the podcast are then getting divvied up among, in addition to yourselves or whatever, to some extent, like the Death Bats holders and the people who are supporting the ecosystem and engaging. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
And then, but obviously you need it to be bigger than just us, right? Because we don't want to charge people for a podcast and then turn around and go, here, we're going to give us $9.99. We'll give you, 20 cents back. So, it's it works perfect in like a Spotify platform where if they gave us the lion's share, we could fractionalize that out. And you look at someone like Joe Rogan, who's got, so many listeners. And it's interesting that they pay him money, but they don't actually pay royalties on Spotify for podcasting. It's all stuff I learned this week. So it's an interesting thing that they do. They take their money they take advertisement money and they take their money and they pay him in that way.
Out of pocket that way. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they're taking their 20%. So the artists actually don't get less money by Joe Rogan being there. Interesting dynamics that I've learned all week.
Let me wrap my head around that. You say the artists don't get less money by Joe Rogan being there, as in it's not
Meaning
coming.
like
it's not coming
Yes.
from the revenue being made
Yes.
for people streaming songs.
Yes.
It's a totally separate pot of money. Okay.
Yeah.
That's coming from ads and other things that they're doing to
ads and like their pot of whatever they're taking
There
for
you go.
running the platform.
Got it.
So
got
it's
it.
interesting. Yeah. It's
Well, hey, honestly, if there's anybody that's probably wants to just like go rogue and be like a maverick and could pull eyeballs, maybe it's time to have a conversation with Joe about going
Right.
going and bringing
It's
his eyeballs
interesting,
to a
though,
new
'cause
decentralized platform.
he hasn't fully grasped, and there's been a couple people that have so explained blockchain and NFT to him. Beeple was on there, and I think Beeple could have gone a little more in depth to make it kind of click. Obviously, Beeple knows what he's talking about, but he's probably trying to keep it surface level. I think if you don't understand the tech, then you almost don't believe what the blockchain can do.
Right.
So you have to kind of explain that first, and then go, okay, well, on top of that, we're going to bake our cake, and this is what you can do because of this underlying thing that keeps it, immutable. And he's had other people come on that he's kind of just blown off, and I wish he understood it a little better, or at least bought into it, because I think it could be really beneficial, especially in this circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, your podcast, what's the name of your podcast? That's unfortunately not
It's
yet
going to be
on
called
Decentralized.
Trax, Trax, like, yeah.
Cool. All right. Do you have if you give us a link or something, we can put it in the show notes, because you're like,
It'll literally just be under the Avenged Sevenfold Spotify
okay, great.
for now. Yep.
Okay, cool. That's very exciting. So Trax, you're going to be breaking down songs with Bees, who's very cool in the death metal space. Did I say that right?
This is the metal space. Yeah.
The metal space.
Yeah.
You can tell if I hadn't mentioned Taylor enough in this episode.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
where I've tended to be. Well, this was awesome. I really look forward to having you back on someday to break it down as we see how this whole space evolves. I'll tune into the podcast. Like I said, you've got a new Avenged Sevenfold fan convert, and I'm so grateful for you coming on today. You're a little bit under the weather, so like it was a special sacrifice for you to kind of come and have this convo, and I really appreciate you doing it.
I always like talking about overpriced JPEGs.
It's the best. It's the best, man.
Yeah, I can't stop talking about it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless Premium subscriber to get the most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks. If you're interested in crypto, the Bankless community is where you want to be. Click the link in the description to become a Bankless Premium subscriber today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for in-depth interviews with industry leaders, Ask Me Anythings, and weekly roll-ups where we summarize the week in crypto and other fantastic content. Thanks everyone for watching and being on the journey as we build out the Bankless Nation.